My own brother destroyed my life with one lie, stole $10 million, and turned my parents against me. But I had a plan they never saw coming. I'm Maya, and 6 months ago, I was the CFO of our family's construction company, living in my dream house and planning my wedding. Today, I'm sitting in a studio apartment that costs more per month than I used to spend on groceries, and my own mother crosses the street when she sees me coming. My brother Derek has always been the golden child. At 32, he's 4 years older than me, 6 feet tall with that easy smile that makes everyone trust him instantly. He's the vice president of operations at Hartwell & Sons, the company our dad Richard built from nothing over 30 years. Derek handles the client relationships while I manage the finances, or at least that's how it used to work. My father Richard is 58, tough as the concrete he pours, and he's never backed down from a fight in his life. He built this company with his bare hands after dropping out of college to support his family. Every calloused finger, every early morning, every weekend sacrificed was for one thing, leaving something behind for his kids. My mother Linda is 55, a retired elementary school teacher who spent her career believing the best in people. She's the type of woman who still bakes cookies for new neighbors and remembers everyone's birthday. Then there's Sarah, Derek's wife of 3 years. She's 30, works as an accountant for a local firm, and she has no idea that her husband is about to destroy 2 families with one perfect lie. Here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts small, with little lies that seem harmless. Derek had been skimming money from our company for months, but he was smart about it. He created a fake consulting company called Mountain Ridge and authorized payments to it using my computer access. $10 million gone, and every digital fingerprint pointed straight to me. When the FBI showed up at our office, Derek played his part perfectly. He looked shocked, hurt, confused. He told our parents he'd been suspicious of my behavior lately but hoped he was wrong. He said he'd tried to protect me, tried to give me a chance to come clean, but he couldn't lie to federal agents. My father looked at me like I was a stranger. My mother cried for 3 days straight. The woman who taught me that family comes first, that we always stand together no matter what, wouldn't even take my phone calls. But while my family was busy treating me like a criminal, I was busy thinking like a detective. See, Derek made one crucial mistake. He assumed that because he'd always been the favorite, because everyone always believed him over me, that I would just accept my fate and disappear quietly. He thought I'd be too heartbroken to fight back. He was wrong. For 6 months while Derek celebrated his perfect crime and my parents mourned their lost daughter, I was collecting evidence. 48 documents that told the real story, 13 recordings that captured the truth, 2 witnesses who saw things Derek thought nobody would ever remember. I didn't fight back with tears or pleas or desperate explanations. I fought back with facts, cold, hard, undeniable facts that would soon turn my brother's perfect lie into his perfect nightmare. Because the thing about being the family accountant is that you learn to be very, very patient. You learn to double-check everything. And you learn that numbers don't lie, even when the people you love do. This is the story of how I lost everything I thought mattered and discovered what actually did. It's about learning that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. But mostly, it's about the moment when my brother's screams echoed through that courtroom. My mother's sobs filled the silence, and I walked out of there knowing that the truth had finally won. It just took $10 million and 6 months of hell to get there. Let me take you back to before everything fell apart, when I still believed that family meant something sacred and unbreakable. Growing up, Derek and I weren't just siblings. We were business partners in training. Dad would bring us to construction sites every summer, teaching us that hard work and integrity were the only currencies that mattered. Derek was the talker, the one who could charm contractors and smooth over disputes with his natural charisma. I was the numbers girl, fascinated by budgets and profit margins, always asking Dad why we allocated funds the way we did. Maya handles the numbers. Derek handles the people, Dad used to say with pride. Together, you two will take this company places I never dreamed of. By the time I graduated college with my finance degree, Hartwell & Sons was pulling in $50 million a year in revenue. Dad had built something incredible from a single pickup truck and a toolbox. When he offered me the CFO position at 26, I felt like I was inheriting a piece of the American dream itself. Derek had been working there for 6 years already, climbing from project manager to vice president of operations. He was good at his job, no question about it. Clients loved him, subcontractors trusted him, and he had this gift for seeing solutions where others saw problems. But there was always something restless about Derek, something that made him want more than what he had earned. I should have paid attention to the signs earlier. The expensive watch that appeared on his wrist last Christmas, the weekend trips to Vegas that became monthly habits, the way he'd get defensive whenever I asked about project budgets in his department. Sarah mentioned once that Derek had been staying late at the office more often, working on something he called consulting projects that he never talked about in detail. He's probably just trying to impress Dad, I told her, and we both laughed about how competitive Derek could be when it came to proving himself. Our parents adored him. Mom would light up whenever Derek walked into a room, the same way she did when he was 5 years old bringing her dandelions from the backyard. Dad saw himself in Derek's confidence, his ability to command respect from crews twice his age. I was proud of my work, but Derek was their golden boy, and honestly, I didn't mind. Success felt better when we shared it as a family. My life was exactly where I wanted it to be. I had a corner office overlooking the main construction yard, a beautiful house in the nicest part of town, and an engagement ring from my college boyfriend Marcus, who ran his own law practice. We were planning a spring wedding, and Dad had already promised to give us the week in Tuscany as our honeymoon gift. The company was thriving. We just landed the biggest contract in our history, a mixed-use development worth $30 million. I was working longer hours than ever, managing cash flow and coordinating with banks, making sure every penny was accounted for. That's my specialty, making sure every penny's accounted for. It was during one of those late-night sessions in March that I first noticed the irregularities. Mountain Ridge Consulting had been receiving payments for the past 8 months, substantial ones. $50,000 here, $75,000 there, all authorized under my digital signature for project consultation services. The problem was, I had never heard of Mountain Ridge Consulting, and I certainly hadn't authorized those payments. My first instinct wasn't suspicion, it was confusion. Maybe Dad had set up the contract and forgotten to brief me. Maybe it was some specialized service Derek had arranged for one of his projects. I pulled the files, cross-referenced the dates with our project schedules, trying to make sense of where nearly $2 million had gone. When I couldn't find any corresponding work orders or project documentation, I decided to ask Derek directly. He was my brother, my business partner, the person I trusted most in the world after our parents. I knocked on his office door that Thursday evening, spreadsheets in hand, expecting a simple explanation that would clear everything up. Derek looked up from his computer with that familiar smile, the one that had been getting him out of trouble since childhood. "Hey, Maya, working late again? You know Dad would tell you to go home and get some rest." "I need to ask you about something," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Do you know anything about a company called Mountain Ridge Consulting?" The smile never left his face, but something flickered behind his eyes, something I should have recognized as panic, but at the time looked like concern. "Mountain Ridge?" Derek frowned thoughtfully. "That sounds familiar. Why do you ask?" "We've paid them almost $2 million over the past 8 months, and I can't find any documentation about what services they provided." Derek leaned back in his chair, shaking his head with what seemed like genuine worry. $2 million? "Maya, that doesn't sound right. Let me look into this tomorrow and get back to you. This could be a serious problem." I trusted him completely. That was my first mistake. 3 weeks passed after my conversation with Derek about Mountain Ridge Consulting. He kept telling me he was looking into it and following up with contacts, but I never saw any progress reports or findings. Every time I brought it up, he'd assure me he was handling it and change the subject to something else. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was reviewing quarterly tax documents when I heard car doors slamming in our parking lot. Through my office window, I watched 4 people in dark suits walk toward our building with the kind of purposeful stride that makes your stomach drop. The woman leading the group flashed a badge to our receptionist, FBI. My hands went cold. In the 15 seconds it took them to reach my office, my mind raced through every possible scenario. Tax issues, permit violations, maybe something with one of our subcontractors. It never occurred to me that I was the target. Maya Hartwell? The lead agent, a woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, stood in my doorway. I'm Agent Patricia Morrison with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize financial records related to fraudulent wire transfers. The warrant listed Mountain Ridge Consulting specifically. They knew about the payments, knew the amounts, knew the dates. Worse, they knew that every transaction had been authorized using my computer login and digital signature. Derek appeared in my doorway within minutes, looking appropriately shocked and concerned. "What's going on here? Maya, are you okay?" Agent Morrison turned to him. "And you are?" "Derek Hartwell, Vice President of Operations. Maya is my sister. What exactly is she being accused of?" "Wire fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. We have evidence that Ms. Hartwell has been systematically stealing from this company and transferring funds to shell companies she created." The word "she" hit me like a physical blow. They thought I had created Mountain Ridge Consulting. They thought I had stolen the money. "There has to be some mistake," Derek said, and I felt a surge of gratitude for his immediate defense of me. Maya would never do something like this. She's the most honest person I know. But then Agent Morrison pulled out a manila folder. "We have digital evidence showing that all transfers were initiated from Ms. Hartwell's computer using her credentials. We also have bank records showing that Mountain Ridge Consulting is registered under her Social Security number." The room started spinning. My Social Security number. Someone had used my Social Security number to create a fake company, and I was looking at federal charges for crimes I didn't commit. "That's impossible," I whispered. But even as I said it, I could see doubt creeping into Derek's expression. Dad arrived within the hour, his face flushed with anger and confusion. Mom came right behind him, her teacher instincts kicking in as she tried to understand what was happening to her daughter. "Maya, tell me this isn't true," Dad said, his voice rough with emotion. "Tell me you didn't steal from our company." "I didn't," I said, but the words sounded weak even to me. How do you prove a negative? How do you convince people you didn't do something when all the evidence says you did? Derek put his hand on Dad's shoulder. "I've been worried about Maya lately," he said quietly. "She's been working such long hours, seemed stressed about money. I thought maybe the wedding expenses were getting to her, but I never imagined anything like this." I stared at my brother in disbelief. "Derek, you know that's not true." "I wanted to believe the best," Derek continued, his voice heavy with what sounded like genuine sorrow. "But last month I caught her working late on projects that weren't in her usual department. When I asked about it, she got defensive and told me to mind my own business." That conversation had never happened. Derek was lying, and he was doing it so smoothly, so convincingly, that I watched my own parents start to believe him over me. "I tried to give her a chance to come clean," Derek said to Agent Morrison. "I even asked her directly about some irregularities I'd noticed, but I can't lie to federal agents to protect someone, even my own sister." Mom started crying then, quiet tears that broke my heart. "Maya, honey, if you're in some kind of trouble, if you needed money, why didn't you just ask us?" "Because I didn't take anything," I said desperately. "Mom, you have to believe me." But I could see in her eyes that she didn't. None of them did. In the span of 2 hours, I went from being the trusted CFO to being the family criminal, and my own brother had helped put the nail in my coffin. The FBI seized my computer, my files, and my access to everything I'd spent 5 years building. By evening, I was suspended from the company indefinitely, and by the weekend, the whole town knew that Maya Hartwell had stolen $10 million from her own family. Derek hugged me before I left that day, whispering, "I'm sorry," in my ear. At the time, I thought he was sorry this was happening to me. Later, I realized he was sorry for what he had done to me. But by then, it was too late to matter. The first week after the FBI raid, I did what everyone expected me to do. I cried, I called my parents, begging them to believe me. I showed up at Derek's house, demanding he tell the truth. I was emotional, desperate, and completely unconvincing. Every tear, every plea, every moment of desperation just made me look more guilty. Marcus broke off our engagement on day 8. He sat across from me in a coffee shop, avoiding eye contact, while he explained that his law practice couldn't survive being associated with a federal fraud case. The ring felt heavy when I slid it across the table to him. "I want to believe you, Maya," he said, "but the evidence is overwhelming." That night, sitting alone in my apartment with a glass of wine and a pile of legal documents, I had a moment of clarity that changed everything. I stopped crying and started thinking. Derek had made this look perfect, but perfection in fraud usually means overconfidence. And overconfident criminals make mistakes because they assume their victims will be too destroyed to fight back intelligently. My brother knew me as the emotional younger sister who always sought family approval. He was counting on me to keep being that person. He expected me to exhaust myself with desperate explanations and tearful confrontations until I eventually gave up or took a plea deal. But Derek had forgotten something crucial about me. I'm an accountant. I don't just manage money, I investigate discrepancies. I find needles in haystacks for a living. And now I had 6 months before my trial to find the biggest needle of my life. I started with what I knew. The FBI said Mountain Ridge Consulting was registered under my Social Security number, but I had never registered any company. That meant someone had committed identity theft, and identity theft leaves paper trails. I hired a private investigator named Tom Chen, a former police detective who specialized in financial crimes. The registration will have an address, a phone number, maybe even security footage from wherever the paperwork was filed, Tom explained during our first meeting. People think digital crimes are invisible, but they're not. While Tom traced the company registration, I focused on the timeline. The Mountain Ridge payments started 8 months ago, but I needed to prove I couldn't have initiated them. I requested my own phone records, credit card statements, travel receipts, anything that could establish my whereabouts during the key dates. The breakthrough came in week 3. Tom discovered that Mountain Ridge Consulting had been registered at a UPS store in downtown Phoenix, 3 hours from our office. The registration was filed on October 15th at 2:30 p.m. I pulled my calendar and found gold. I was in a budget meeting with our bank that entire afternoon, with 12 witnesses and security cameras to prove it. But Derek had been in Phoenix that day, attending a construction trade show. I found his hotel receipt in the company expense files, document number 1. I started building a systematic case file, treating it like the most important audit of my life. Every piece of evidence went into labeled folders. Financial records, digital evidence, timeline documentation, witness statements. I worked on it every night after my temporary job at a small accounting firm, fueled by determination rather than emotion. The security footage was document number 7. The UPS store had cameras, and Tom managed to get the footage from October 15th. A man in a baseball cap filled out the registration forms, but the angle was wrong to see his face clearly. However, the timestamp showed 2:28 p.m., exactly when I was sitting in a conference room 60 miles away. Document number 12 was Derek's credit card statement, which I obtained through Sarah. I called her one evening, pretending I needed to discuss some company insurance forms Derek had supposedly asked me to handle before my suspension. "I'm so sorry about everything that's happening," Sarah said, her voice genuinely sympathetic. "Derek has been so upset about this whole situation. He keeps saying he should have seen the signs earlier." "It's been hard on everyone," I replied carefully. "By the way, Derek mentioned he might have some business receipts from that Phoenix trade show in October. Do you know if he kept those?" "Oh, the Phoenix trip. That was such a stressful time for him. He came back acting really strange, like he was worried about something. He'd been getting a lot of phone calls he wouldn't take in front of me." Document number 15 was Derek's phone records, which showed multiple calls to the same Phoenix number in the weeks following the trade show. Tom traced the number to a man named Vincent Carrera, who ran a document service business that specialized in corporate registrations and paperwork filing. By month 2, I had 28 documents that told a very different story than the one Derek had sold to the FBI. But documents weren't enough. I needed recordings, and I needed witnesses who could testify to Derek's behavior changes. That's when I decided to do something that felt like betrayal, but was really just survival. I started recording every conversation I had with my family members. The most damning recording would come from Derek himself, but that would require patience, strategy, and one perfectly timed moment of vulnerability. I was building a case, piece by piece, that would destroy my brother's perfect lie. The question was whether I could finish it before it destroyed me first. The courtroom was packed on the morning of my trial. Local news had covered the story for months. Family CFO accused of stealing millions. Derek sat in the front row with our parents, playing the role of the heartbroken brother, supporting his family through a terrible ordeal. My lawyer, Patricia Williams, had initially been skeptical of my evidence. Circumstantial cases are hard to win, Maya, she'd warned me. But as I walked her through each document, each timeline discrepancy, each recorded conversation, I watched her skepticism transform into determination. We're not just proving your innocence, Patricia told me the night before trial. We're proving Derek's guilt. That's a much stronger position. The prosecution went first, laying out what seemed like an airtight case. They showed the jury my computer login credentials on every fraudulent transaction. They displayed bank records with my Social Security number on the Mountain Ridge registration. They painted a picture of a trusted employee who had betrayed her family's faith for personal gain. Derek testified on the second day. He was perfect, as always, sympathetic but not overly dramatic, disappointed but still loving toward his misguided sister. He told the jury about his concerns over my behavior, the late nights, the defensiveness when he'd asked innocent questions. I kept hoping I was wrong, Derek said, his voice cracking just enough to sound genuine. Maya is my little sister. I wanted to protect her, even from herself. I watched our parents in the gallery, Mom dabbing at her eyes while Dad's jaw clenched with barely contained emotion. They believed every word. Then it was our turn. Patricia started with the timeline evidence. She showed the jury security footage from the bank meeting, time-stamped exactly when Mountain Ridge was being registered in Phoenix. She displayed Derek's hotel receipt from the same city on the same day. The coincidence was too stark to ignore. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia said, Maya Hartwell couldn't have registered this company because she was in a boardroom 60 miles away, surrounded by witnesses. Next came the phone records. Derek's multiple calls to Vincent Carrera, the document service provider, all within days of the company registration. Carrera himself testified via video link, confirming that a man matching Derek's description had paid cash for expedited business registration services. He wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, Carrera said he was starting a consulting business and needed everything filed quickly and discreetly. But the real bombshell was Sarah's testimony. My sister-in-law took the stand looking nervous, but determined. Patricia had prepared her carefully, walking her through the timeline of Derek's behavioral changes. In October, Derek started working late more often, Sarah testified. He said he was developing new business opportunities, but he became secretive about his phone calls. He'd leave the room when certain numbers called. Did his spending habits change? Patricia asked. Yes, he bought expensive items without discussing them with me first. A Rolex watch, a new car, a vacation to the Bahamas that he said was a bonus from work. When I asked about the bonus, he got angry and told me not to question his success. Sarah's voice broke slightly. I thought he was having an affair. The secretiveness, the unexplained money, the way he'd jump when his phone rang. I never imagined he was stealing from his own family. I watched Derek's facade crack for the first time. He was staring at his wife with an expression of shocked betrayal, as if he couldn't believe she'd turned against him. But the moment that sealed his fate came when Patricia played the recording from month 4 of my investigation. Derek had called me late one night, drunk and maudlin after another fight with Sarah about his suspicious behavior. I'd answered on the second ring, my recording app already running. Maya? Derek's slurred voice filled the courtroom. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. Sorry for what, Derek? For everything. For what I did to you. I never meant for it to go this far. What did you do to me? You know what I did. I needed the money, Maya. The gambling debts were crushing me, and I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. But then the FBI got involved, and I panicked. Everyone always believed me over you anyway, so I thought maybe I could make this your problem instead of mine. The courtroom erupted. Derek shot to his feet, screaming, "That's taken out of context! She manipulated me! She got me drunk and twisted my words!" But the recording continued, capturing another 5 minutes of Derek's detailed confession. including specifics about how he'd used my credentials and forged documents with my social security number. Patricia let the recording play in its entirety, while Derek's lawyer frantically objected, and Derek himself sat down heavily, his face white with the realization of what he'd done to himself. Mom was crying now, loud sobs that echoed through the courtroom. Dad sat motionless, staring at Derek as if seeing him for the first time. The son he'd trusted, the golden child he'd believed in, had just confessed to destroying his daughter's life for gambling money. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned with a guilty verdict on all counts, Derek screamed again, not words this time, just a raw sound of rage and disbelief. He'd been so certain his charm would save him, so convinced that his word would always trump mine. Mom collapsed into Dad's arms, her cries filling the silence after Derek's outburst. Reporters pushed forward, cameras flashing, everyone wanting to capture the moment when the golden child fell. I felt nothing but exhaustion. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a bone-deep tiredness that came from fighting for 6 months to prove a truth everyone should have believed from the beginning. The judge sentenced Derek to 5 years in federal prison and ordered full restitution of the stolen funds. As the bailiff led him away in handcuffs, Derek looked back at me one last time. I didn't look away. I walked out of that courtroom alone, leaving my parents to grieve both their lost son and their abandoned daughter. The truth had won, but the victory tasted like ashes. Justice, I learned, doesn't heal the wounds that betrayal leaves behind. It just stops the bleeding. Derek got 5 years in federal prison and full restitution, but money can't buy back trust. The judge's gavel came down, the reporters got their story, and everyone moved on with their lives except the people who actually lived through it. Dad came to my apartment 3 weeks after the trial. He stood in my doorway looking older than his 58 years, holding a manila envelope and struggling to find words that could possibly bridge the gap between us. "The company needs you back," he said finally. "Your position is waiting, plus a 20% raise and full authority over all financial operations." I looked at the man who had raised me, who had taught me about integrity and hard work, who had chosen to believe his golden child over his honest daughter when it mattered most. "You needed me when you threw me away," I told him. "I don't need you anymore." He tried again. "Maya, please. I know I failed you. Your mother and I both failed you. We let our love for Derek blind us to who he really was." "It wasn't love," I said. "Love would have meant believing in me enough to at least investigate before you condemned me. What you had for Derek was favoritism, and what you showed me was that family loyalty only flows one direction in this house." Dad left the envelope on my kitchen counter. Inside was a check for $2 million, what he called compensation for the pain we caused you. I never cashed it. Mom tried a different approach. She showed up at my new office 6 months later, crying before she even sat down. My consulting firm was thriving by then. Turns out, surviving a high-profile embezzlement case gives you serious credibility when businesses need someone to audit their internal controls. "I was your mother," she sobbed. "I was supposed to protect you, supposed to believe in you. Instead, I abandoned you when you needed me most." "You were Derek's mother too," I replied. "The difference is, he actually was guilty, and you still stood by him." She begged me to come home for Christmas, to give the family a chance to heal. I declined, just like I declined Easter, Thanksgiving, and every birthday invitation that followed. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt with apologies and good intentions. The hardest part wasn't losing my parents. It was learning to trust people again. When someone can lie to your face for months while systematically destroying your life, when your own family can discard you based on circumstantial evidence, it changes how you see everyone around you. I went to therapy for 2 years. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that Derek's betrayal wasn't just about money or favoritism. It was about power. Derek had always been threatened by my competence, my attention to detail, my growing influence in the company. Destroying me wasn't just convenient for his crime, it was personally satisfying. Narcissists don't just want to win, Dr. Martinez explained. They want you to lose. Derek didn't just steal money, he stole your identity, your reputation, your family. That was the real crime. Sarah divorced Derek while he was in prison. She sent me a letter apologizing for not seeing the signs earlier, for not speaking up sooner. We meet for coffee sometimes. She's remarried now to a teacher who coaches Little League and has never made a bet in his life. My business grew beyond anything I'd imagined. I specialize in family businesses now, helping them create systems that prevent internal fraud. It's ironic work, protecting other families from the kind of destruction that mine couldn't survive. I've learned to spot the warning signs, the charming family member who always has explanations for everything, the financial irregularities that get dismissed because we trust family, the reluctance to implement oversight because it shows we don't have faith in each other. Trust without verification isn't love, it's negligence. Derek writes me letters from prison, one every month, like clockwork. I've never opened a single one, but I haven't thrown them away either. They sit in a shoebox in my closet, a reminder that some people never stop trying to manipulate you, even from behind bars. He gets out next year. Sarah heard through mutual friends that he's planning to move back to town, that he wants to rebuild relationships and make amends. Part of me wonders if he's genuinely changed, if prison taught him something about consequences and accountability. The smarter part of me knows better. I'm 30 now, running a 7-figure consulting firm from the city I moved to after the trial. I have friends who know my whole story and care about me anyway. I'm dating someone who thinks my attention to detail is an asset, not a threat. I own a house with a view of the mountains and enough space for the rescue dogs I foster. My life is good, built on foundations that no one can shake because I laid them myself. The lesson in all of this isn't about justice or revenge or even family dysfunction. It's about the difference between reacting and responding. When Derek framed me, my instinct was to react emotionally, to fight back with tears and desperation and pleas for people to believe me. That would have been normal. It also would have been useless. Instead, I learned to respond strategically. I gathered evidence, built cases, recorded conversations, and let the truth speak for itself. I didn't waste energy trying to change minds that were already made up. I focused on proving facts that couldn't be argued with. That's the real power in any impossible situation. You can't control what other people choose to believe about you, but you can control what you do with the truth once you find it. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. Sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up for you when showing up is hard. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so good that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt betrayed by the people you trusted most, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me about a time you had to choose between reacting and responding. And subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people surviving impossible situations and coming out stronger on the other side. Because the truth always wins. Sometimes it just takes longer than you'd like.